接下来，请容我介绍 Dr. Spitz。Dr. Spitz 是德国科隆莱茵应用技术大学 RFH 设计管理、设计科学和传播管理的教授，也是该大学理事会的一员。他负责媒体设计专案，并致力于未来设计教育的研究和探索。Dr. Spitz 目前也是 IF 设计基金会的董事会成员。他曾为 IF 设计基金会进行了一项设计教育的国际研究，并于2021年出版的 IF 设计教育白皮书。此外，他的众多书籍和文章关注于设计师的社会责任。Dr. Spitz 定期为 The Design Journal 撰写评论，并且在欧洲最大的公共广播电台 WDR 发表了450多篇的设计专题。2004年到2007年期间，他也担任了德国乌尔姆国际设计论坛 IFG 的顾问委员会的主席，并且在欧洲和亚洲策划了许多国际设计会议和展览。让我们以热烈的掌声欢迎 Dr. Spitz 上台演讲。Let's welcome Dr. Spitz to the stage with warm applause.
Ladies and gentlemen, dear audience, dear design community, thank you for your invitation. I'm really honored to be here with you today, celebrating IF Award and looking a little bit back to the history of IF, not only but also design history. I'm grateful about this opportunity for conversation. Okay. If we ask Google about design, we maybe receive, no, we don't receive these images. Yeah. This is what I wanted to start with. Thank you. 8 years ago, these lines would have not made any sense. Today, it does make sense to us. Obviously, something has changed. And I would like to exchange with you about this, some thoughts about change, about transformation, about progress. And if we ask Google about design, we receive these images. Could you check the next slide, please? Yeah, these images. These images present design to us as something colorful, something fancy, something fashionable and trendy. And we know that a huge majority associates not only these attributes with design, but design is also quite often seen as something expensive, although the quality, in fact, is cheap. Design is too often regarded as a beautiful and tempting facade for short-time pleasure. Next one, please. I observe and realize this situation. I'm not the only one, but I do not think that it should be like this. My key message for today, the core of design is something completely different. The core of design is the commitment for a human future. Next one. Design is the phenomenon of a specific mode of creation in the modern era. Design is characterized by 4 features. First, the industrial framework. Before industrialization, there is no design. Second, the division of labor. It is a specialization in a sequential process. Third, the series. We speak of design when it is a matter of mass and identical production according to a prototype. And fourth, the commercial embedding. The combination of these four elements is the basis for the difference to other ways of creation: engineering, architecture, art, and craft. We refer to both the practice and its results as design. Design is a new term for a new reality. Before that, it was called industrial art. Design is both a child of modernism and a driving factor that fuels, advances, and stabilizes the historical process of modernism. Modernism is not an aesthetic phenomenon at its core. Modernism is a different understanding of time. Before modernism, the past was important. Traditions determined what had to be done, how it had to be done, and why it had to be done. People were guided by what was handed down to them from their ancestors. For modernism, just the opposite is true. Modernism does not look back, but forward. The past does not help us to shape the future. Because we have to make our own decisions, we have to form our own judgments. Modern man is fundamentally critical of all claims made by others. For with modern science, next slide please, thank you. For with modern science, people are realizing that quite a few beliefs and convictions from the past are in fact superstitions and errors. Every day, people learn something new from science. Every day they learn something new from the mass media. Every day, industry brings relief to everyday life. Therefore, the attitude that we cannot foresee what tomorrow will be, what the future will bring us, is characteristic of modernism. Time is moving faster and faster. At the same time, however, nothing is predetermined. Our future is not fixed. We can shape it. Each individual is free and autonomous. That is why modernism is thoroughly political at its core. The First World War shook the moderns' faith in progress. Everything that promised a prosperous future for mankind suddenly turns into an inhuman, unimaginably cruel slaughter factory. War is industrialized. Cannons are operated like machines in a factory. They kill people 50 kilometers away. Their murderers are unaware of it. Science invents poison gas. For the first time, people die because they breathe. Nature is poisoned, and the deadly poison is invisible. Modernism has not led mankind to paradise, but to hell. A young German architect, Walter Gropius, like many other artists and intellectuals, searched for answers to this terrible situation. The Bauhaus is not understandable without this shock to the entire world. What can they do not to despair? Walter Gropius and his colleagues look for the solution not in the past, but in the future. They want to set up something new because the old has led into the catastrophe of the First World War. They want to develop new forms to shape the future, a future that has set itself free from the old traditions. Art serves them as the guideline. Art is international. Art is important for everybody. Art is a uniting power for humanity. Art is the solution to the question how society can be transformed into a peaceful and free society. Basic colors were seen as universal artistic framework. This is why the Bauhaus approach is based on red, blue, yellow, black, white, and gray. And elementary geometry was seen as universal artistic framework too. This is why the Bauhaus approach is based on square, circle, and triangle. These elements were seen as free of any tradition, of any traditional meaning, and universal for everybody in the world. The core of the Bauhaus idea: we shape everyday life as art. Basically, all people are equal, and therefore it is possible and necessary to give all people equally the best possible artistic product. The Bauhaus is the most influential art school of the 20th century. The goal is to transfer art into everyday life. That is the idea. The instrument to achieve this is architecture. Here we see artists all around the architect in the center. He is the conductor, the manager of them all. The house is the center. Everything is focused on making the building a total work of art. Industry is then added as a partner, especially at the Bauhaus Dessau. This gives rise to design that are subjected to the artistic rules of a new aesthetic, the so-called industrial aesthetic. Although it is a contradiction in terms, people are quick to speak of the Bauhaus style. Actually, styles should be overcome by the Bauhaus, and each form should be developed autonomously from its task. That these convictions and goals were thoroughly political can already be seen from the fact that the ruling politicians despised and fought the Bauhaus. The designers who played an important role in the 20th century have experienced the Weimar Republic, the First World War, and the Second World War. Their childhood was marked by violence, economic uncertainty, and political extremes. For example, Otto Eicher, German designer, he was 10 years old when the National Socialists came to power. Throughout his youth, their physical brutality, their inhuman recklessness, and their intellectual incapacity were omnipresent. After the Second World War, democratic initiatives, we could call them grassroots initiatives, started all over Germany. The most important one, in terms of design, grew in the city of Ulm in southern Germany. These initiatives were underpinned by the pathetically so-called zero hour. This meant a continuation from a point in time before 1933, as if the Nazis had been a mere mishap of German history. This was unthinkable. All traditions had become unquestionable, as they did not prevent the Nazis' seizure of power and daily terror regime. Picking up the thread of previous international design movements appeared as questionable and dubious as well. The traditions and discourses of English arts and crafts, French Art Nouveau, Italian Futurism, Russian Constructivism and Suprematism, Dutch De Stijl, and the German Werkbund or Bauhaus, they had all in common that art was in the center of their attention. Their ideal of a life which is only perfect when it has become art is based on the genius idea. It contradicts universal principles and had been misused by the Nazis. Let's have a look at a company that is famous for being driven by design. These are commercials. Maybe we can see them. Sorry, the movie doesn't work. Okay, there was a commercial by the company Brown from the late 40s and 50s, where we see that this company before design is stuck in traditional, exchangeable, and arbitrary forms. Okay, we try this one. Yeah. We recognize this tension between tradition and progress, between reconstruction and new forms everywhere in the early 1950s. It's just like the sight of visible destruction from the war and the new constructed streets, new buildings, new car traffic. At the same time, there are still several important and powerful initiatives which don't want to reconstruct, but to develop a new future. For example, in Hanover. You saw how this short movie, the British military government had organized this industrial fair in 1947. And, thank you, in 1953, on this German industrial fair, Deutsche Industriemesse, it was staged the first exhibition of selected products. These selected products were shown under the title Special Show of Well-Designed Industrial Goods. This initiative was founded by representatives of industry, culture, and politics. Together, they wanted to contribute to a peaceful, free, and democratic future. They were convinced that design comprised social, production-related, economic, functional, cultural, and aesthetic aspects in equal measure. In today's terms, they wanted to promote design as a core component for sustainability. That was the birth of IIF. This is the cover of IIF's first book, published in 1954. Fun fact, this is where the name comes from. IIF is an abbreviation for Industrieform, industrial form, industrial design. The logo is from 1962. At the same time, in 1953, the Ulm School of Design began running. I want to stay a little bit with the Ulm School because it has had the biggest influence on design, not only in Germany, but also in Europe and internationally. I assume that the Ulm School was more influential for design than the Bauhaus. The Ulm School was founded by Otto Eicher, Inge Eicher-Scholl, and Max Bill. Here we see them together with Walter Gropius at the opening ceremony of the buildings in 1955. But don't let this image confuse you. The Ulm School was not a successor of Bauhaus. The founders of the Ulm School didn't want to continue the Bauhaus. They were looking for their own way, a radical new way. They were not primarily interested in designing beautiful posters and lamps. They wanted to contribute to the development of a peaceful, democratic, and free society. It's not about fixing an aesthetic deficit. It's about fixing a societal deficit. What did they need in order to reach their goal? Which principles guided them to develop forms, shapes, appearances for a brighter future? What is fundamentally new here is that design was no longer determined by the values of art. Design emancipated itself from art. This made it possible to see the use of products in a new way and to think about them in a new way. Objects could be freed from their traditional context. They became autonomous and could be therefore redesigned from scratch. The extraordinary aspect of the so-called Snow White's coffin is not the plexiglass cover, but the metal casing and the freedom of positioning in space. The backside is as good as the front side. You could say there is no second best side anymore. According to this understanding, design is not about creating the holiday, but everyday life. Not the special, but the usual. While art elevates life, design serves to manage everyday life. Design serves the most, not the happy few. This design addresses the vast majority of the population. It is directed at their needs so that their everyday life is less laborious, so that they have fewer worries, so that their work is easier. The hope is that those who are freed from trouble and worry will feel strong and confident so that they will not fall for the lies of propaganda. Rational thought and arguments expedient in finding the best solution for everybody involved. Modern production is developed in teams, and the designer is only a team player, one team player in a rationally structured process. Design for a human future is a result of methodology, not of inspiration. Scientific evidence leads the way, not the gifted genius. Design seeks for systematic solution made up of scalable and versatile elements. It's not about unique findings. Design does not rule or dominate the context, it integrates the context. Design takes all relevant perspectives into account, examines them unprejudiced and thoroughly, and leads to a logical evaluation of the analysis results. Design should not manipulate people with tricks, but rather inform and persuade by conclusive argumentation. Design is neither loud nor shrill. It's not the short-term surprising and the fashionable effect. Information needs no entertainment, no distraction, no emotional overwhelming. Next slide, please. Thank you. Communication was seen as a mutual and complementary exchange of what is meaningful, not as a one-sided announcement or propagandistic temptation. Citizens should inform themselves and adopt a critical approach, a critical position towards the state. This design makes technology visible as technology. It does not pretend to be something else, but a contribution to the technical civilization. The design is reduced to the uttermost. There's nothing else but the matter of fact. The form, the shape, the design has no meaning in itself. There should be no style. This design could not be developed by specialists. Specialists were said to be slaves. Instead, a broad general knowledge is required. Societal responsibility is the vital foundation. This design was meant to be totally international. It overcomes barriers of national language. It is intended to be understood by every person. Knowledge is not exclusive anymore. Not only the visual language changed, modern design needed new terms like communication and an unindividual, unpersonal mode of verbal expression. This design is not a value-free occupation. The designer cannot delegate the responsibility for shaping society. The joy of this design comes from intellect, not from affect. Let's be serious. We can have fun. We can be emotional, but only in private. We don't trust emotions because the Nazis have misused emotions. Why did I talk for several minutes only about this institution of design education, the Ulm School of Design? Because the Ulm School of Design defined the conceptual guidelines for German design and somewhat less for European and worldwide design. We can see how strongly Apple relates to these considerations, at least in regards of the aesthetic conclusion. But design is not about aesthetics. It's about politics. It's about shaping everybody's life for a human future. As Thomas Maldonado stated, the aesthetic factor constitutes only one single factor among others. It's neither the principal nor the predominant one. But this narrative came to a brutal end in the late 1960s, for modernism failed to deliver on its promises. Modernism has promised that the world would become more peaceful, free, just, and humane if we followed design rules. In fact, however, this has not happened. The world has not become better, only different. Robert Venturi, Denise Scott Brown, and Steve Isenur put their finger on the wound when they made fun of the fact that in the middle of the Nevada desert, a city was growing and flourishing that really shouldn't be there in modernism. A city that didn't give a damn. Next slide, please. Thank you. A city that didn't give a damn about the aesthetic rules that were supposed to lead to a better society. This was about nothing more than fun and entertainment, amusing facade, eye-catching decoration. The symbol is more than the substance. Irony became the defining tone of any narrative that had to be entertaining above all else. Anyone who was serious was laughed at. The historical forms were discovered as repertoire for quotations and collage. There is no more progress or perfection, only transformation. And the meaning of consumption is the consumption of meaning. Design was in the middle of this debate when digitization took hold. Since then, we have a new debate. It's no longer about the cultural mastery of the technical civilization. It's now about the cultural mastery of digital civilization. The previous slide, please. Oh, no, sorry, next slide. I'm sorry. Thank you. The modern world is a design world. Design has caused the disappearance of modern things. In the digital world, the things themselves are disappearing. The smartphone we use is used as a phone, as a letter, as a camera, as a telephoto lens, as a wide-angle lens, as a movie camera, as a blue filter, as a red filter, as a darkroom, as a newspaper, as a magazine, as a television, as a scale, as a watch, as a heart rate monitor, as a blood pressure monitor, as a map, as a bookshelf, as a typewriter, as a picture book, as a calculator, as a stereo, as a radio, as a tape recorder, as a piano, as a flight simulator, as a machine gun. This list is endless. Our world, the modern industrialized world, is a complex world. What you see here is a wrong image. It's an illusion. It appears as if we were an observer from outside, as if we could have everything within our view, as if we could sort everything out. This is the image that is usually connected with design. But the modern world is not simple, it's complex. There is an endless amount of interdependencies. There is no neutral position from outside. We are not independent and objective observers. Think of the pandemic, COVID. It's a perfect example for modern problems. Think of climate change. Think of mass consumption. Think of social media, energy, plastic, and so on. 50 years ago, the Club of Rome was already talking about the fact that there are limits to growth and that we need to come up with some new strategies to master the pressing tasks facing society. This report opened the doors towards sustainability. Thinking about the necessary steps also led us at IF to change many years ago. These changes led to the transformation of the IF organization into a non-profit foundation. Our issues, our tasks, our assignments are not simple anymore. We are part of the situation that needs to be developed. The challenge is in constant change. It's not fixed. Most design topics of the 20th century are so-called lame problems, simple problems. These problems are solved. Still, we continue to give new answers and answers and answers without realizing that the question is already answered. This is why simple design of simple tools is not a solution but a problem. Here we see the so-called Caribbean bustard turtle, which died from a neck injury caused by the strap of a discarded beach chair. This is one of the rarest and most endangered sea turtle species. Simple answers are not the solution, they are the problem. We need education if we want to deal with uncertainty, with contradictions, with different interests and perspectives. Critical thinking needs education. Simple answers lead to hate and destruction. I talked a lot about design and about the places, the institutions of design education, about Bauhaus, at the Ulm School of Design. Maybe you can understand our excitement at IF when we were asked in early 2016 to design education, to define the curriculum for a new design school that had to be founded. This sounded to us like a once-in-a-lifetime chance. When we were asked to develop a new design school, it was very tempting to define what is needed just from our experience, from our knowledge, within the constraints of our expectations and values and perspectives. Of course, our view is limited, our imagination is limited, our definition is shaped by our experiences. It was clear, if we develop it only from our point of view, we will just continue with the old traditions. We will perpetuate and duplicate and replicate what already exists. This is why we started with research. We went all over the world, went also to Taipei, and talked with hundreds of people. We went to their place, to design schools and design studios and industry. We wanted to learn from them. Basically, we had only one question: what design schools teach. Is it what is needed for the future of design? As you might expect, what we learned was a catastrophe. 2 years ago, 2011, we published our results. Please read it, build your own opinion. You can download it for free and share it. Let's break down our learnings in order to describe what has to be done in design education, what has to be learned at design school, what is needed for the design practice. The design practice requires, according to these insights, expertise in 8 major areas. You see, aesthetics still belongs to the core of design practice, but aesthetics is only 1 out of 8. It's only 15% of time and energy. And there are no specific tools at all to be taught. Everything you can learn via YouTube, you should learn with online tutorials. This is not what a university, what academic studies are about. Furthermore, we learned that topics of personal development or personal growth are crucial. Personal development unleashes the full potential of design. This is the result of our research. This is what has to be done in design education. Okay, well, it might not appear too spectacular to you, too radical at first sight, I admit. But I can assure you, it is. It is radical. It has nothing got to do with art school approach, that is the tradition and the burden we have to get rid of in design education. Now, think about the question, how do we transform our existing design education to something new according to this model? Yeah, this was the question 2 years ago. And we wanted to give an answer to this question. How do we transform design education in practice, not in theory? Again, we could be tempted to do this on our own, but this is not the way we do it. Again, we are at a new starting point. In last October, we have launched our new research program for the next 3 years. Our agenda, we want to give answers how this new design education program can be realized, not in theory but in practice. We combine impulses or keynotes on the recent discourse with practical workshops and reflection. Let me give you an example. We have heard that innovation must be one of the major topics of design education. So, what do we have to do if we want to transform our existing institution? We asked someone who is an expert in teaching innovation in the design context. Gareth Loudon teaches this at RCA and Imperial College in London. We asked him, how do you teach innovation? He answered, you need to establish trust. You need to establish respect. You need creativity, empathy, emotional intelligence, etc. Okay, understood. Let me ask you one more question. How do you teach trust? What's the assignment for trust? Is it a presentation? Is it a written exam? What's the grading for trust? You see, now it's becoming interesting. In March this year, we were diving deep into learning and teaching sciences. We exchanged on neuroscience, experiential learning, growth mindset, impact measurement. And if you visit our website, you can see some of these impulses online. In coming October, we will learn how to integrate emotional intelligence, empathy, critical thinking, leadership, service orientation, and so on. So all these personal growth topics. We want to gather all the experiences that are already there in the world. We just have to put them together and integrate them in design education. This is what we will do in the next 3 years. And in 2025, we will share our results again for free. If you want to participate, you are more than welcome. Here you can find the free download of the books with this website. It's really free of cost and free of data. We don't want your email address. Our mission is to contribute to a development that leads to design education for a human future. It would be fantastic if you would join us in building a new learning community. Please let me know if you would want to take part in this journey. You are cordially invited. Let's do this together. Thank you.